Welcome to Goldfish on Games and the world of Jumping Jackson, which was developed and published by Infogrames in 1990, with it hitting the Atari ST first and then an Amiga version coming a little later. I have here the budget Amiga release, which we'll be using for this review, but originally it would have come in this amazing box, which has to be one of the holy grail items for my collection. But until that day, I will just use this copy. Now that is a title screen. The great art, the crowd noises, and then the voice. It's always so hard to hit the fire button to end that music and move on to the main menu, but we have to. Thankfully, we do get a new track for said menu, and it actually gives us a few options, including a 1 or round robin style 2-player mode, entering a password, which we will loop back round to later, viewing a rolling demo, which really helps to explain the basics of the game, or you can check out the quite optimistic top 1000 scores. And then finally we can select between A or B mode, each with having 16 unique levels, with B being harder. But with the settings in place, it's time to start. And the first level of the A set is a relatively simple one, which is a great way to introduce you to the basics, as you play as the title character, Jumping Jackson. Your job is to restore rock music as it's been stolen by the evil classical. And you do that by collecting records and playing them. And this is all done via a puzzle system. As you see these grated tiles that have the colour, well, they change every time our hero jumps on them. And if you make a set of them the same colour, then a record will be produced. Well, that is if the colour is actually required. And you can see the needed colours on the left of the screen. But with the record collected and safely in your personal jukebox, we can go and place it on the right coloured record player in the world. Do that for all of them, then safely make it to a checkerboard square, and you can move on to the next level. As a core concept, it's actually quite original and interesting. And the feedback it gives you when you complete the puzzles is amazing, as each time you place a record on a player, then the music will start to play, and it builds up with each record that you put down as well. It's such a simple idea but works so amazingly. But after the first level, it turns out we are not alone in these levels. And we're not going to be able to just do whatever it is we want to do, as those evil classical instruments have turned up and are trying to stop you returning rock to the people. And there are a range of these, with the trumpet being the first one that you'll see. Now these will just randomly move around, and so aren't too hard to avoid. But in a neat touch, each instrument actually has its own logic and behaviour. We have those that just follow some basic rules and will travel around the map. We then get these big boys that will sit there and just throw lightning at you. Or we have the drums that, like all good drummers, you'll hear them before you see them. And then you have those that will actively try and track you down. And dealing with them is mostly about using your wits and their logic against them. But you do have a trick up the sleeve of your leather jacket. The cassettes. You can drop these on any empty square, and it will block the instrument from being able to travel across it. Which on its own might not sound massively useful, but there are also other squares that they can't walk on. For example, the exits, or a square with a record ready to be picked up, so you can try and use the environment against them as well. and seeing that initially you can only hold a single record at a time, there might be a few of those sat around. But there are upgrades in the game, with you being able to extend your personal jukebox being one of them. And being able to hold more than one record really does help, as you can imagine. But annoyingly, it will just randomly drop back down to 1 every so often. I've never quite worked out the logic of that one. So you should always be on the lookout for that pickup. Along with a few of the others, such as the one that will give you an extra life, or there's one of my favourites, the tape player, which can either be a massive help or a hindrance. As when it's active, if you stand on a puzzle square, it'll set all of that puzzle to the same colour. And if it's the one that you need, then amazing. If it's not, then you have to wait for it to run out before you can do anything with that puzzle. I do like how the game never rests on its laurels, because just as you're getting used to the mechanics of the game, they'll throw in a new one just for good measure. Like the teleporters. These play a huge part in the game, as you'll have these set ones that will always take you to the same point, and they get heavily used in the puzzles, and then there's the random ones that can either save you or completely damn you, as I've seen them send me right next to an enemy in the past. Or if I've been lucky, it can send an enemy far away to save me, because the baddies can use the teleporters. So you have to be careful that one doesn't suddenly show up right next to you. It's always a bit risky to use them, but in some levels you have to. Which is also the same of the invisible paths, which I'm really not a fan of, as having to randomly try and walk off the regular tiles in hope of finding one of the hidden ones isn't fun, and there's a few levels that are designed around these things as well. And I feel like I also have to mention the loading screens, as they have this great little copper bar effect going on. It's not too fancy, but I just think it's absolutely neat, and just goes along amazingly with the rest of the game. The password system is the last bit I really want to mention, as every 4 levels you get the chance at the challenge level. Now these are puzzles in their own right, because when you move off a square you can't return to it. So you have to plot a course around the whole map, jumping on every single note. Get it right and you'll get a password, mess it up and no password for you. Which is a little harsh if you ask me, as you have to learn how to get to the challenge level, then learn the challenge level before you can even return to it again. But if you're not interested in the passwords, then there is a secondary objective, as there will be power-up tiles, and if you get one of those and then make it to the exit, then it will show up on the next level, which I feel is a really cool touch, and just one of many in the game. Which is an absolutely lovely little title, though not one without its issues. By the nature of our main character jumping, the controls don't always feel as responsive as you might like. But if you can get used to that, and the occasional moments where the game just suddenly speeds up for no real reason, then you will find a really nice game waiting for you. And it even has one of the most evil punishments I have ever seen for losing a life. As all the music that you've started playing will stop. How could you do that to me? Or the musician who spent ages making some incredible music, and who just happens to be one of this channel's favourite musicians. Yes, once again, it's Stephen Peak. And if you'll excuse me, I'll be listening to the stellar soundtrack. And until next time, I've been the Goldfish. That was a war between classical and rock music, and this was Goldfish on Games. Thank you for watching this video on one of my favourite games. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if that was the case, then consider using those buttons just below the videos. You know the ones I mean, the ones that every YouTuber talks about. Otherwise, you can check out some of the other videos I've done that should be on the screen right now.